Up, gang? Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now, listen, the Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, more as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So, come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. And I'm going to be doing a solo for you all about the Great Recession that may or may not be happening around us right now. Man, I'm going to tell you, so I'm in a bunch of different groups. I'm in a bunch of different investor groups and a lot of people looking at the economy. I'm in a bunch of these different signal groups. And, I consider myself a political moderate. And I think the economy is a topic that people politically like to talk about a lot. And so we're hearing, we're in a recession, 2 straight quarters of GDP reduction is the technical definition of a recession, but it has to be declared by, such and such, group in the United States. And listen, I'm going to start off by saying we have some, we're driving the car and the engine light's on. Don't get me wrong. We have some inflation issues, but I am a numbers person. I'm a data person, big time. I can't help myself. I'm like, yeah, show me the data. I want to see the data. And the data, the issue that we have is that the data can be pretty complicated. So let's go and look. Let's just break this thing down. Yes, there is a widely held sentiment that 2 quarters of negative GDP means that you're in a recession. However, we are in slightly unprecedented times. So I want to break this down because I have a perspective about this that's very different than what I'm hearing out there in the news, and I'd like to share this with you as the audience because I think that my perspective is worth listening to, at least because I have not heard anyone talking about what I'm going to say in just a moment. So first and foremost, if 2 negative quarters of GDP is a technical recession or perceived to be a technical recession, let's look and see what GDP is. What is the definition of GDP, right? And when we look at that, there's a definition. I used the Google, and the Google says GDP is composed of goods and services produced for sale in the market and also includes some non-market production, such as defense or education services provided by government. An alternative concept is GNP. Okay, so now, what does that mean? That basically means that when we spend money on stuff, you add it all up, and that's your GDP. Okay. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the thing so this morning I see the headline. We have negative GDP of 0.9%. Expectation was positive 0.3%. Okay. If we go back to last quarter, it was negative 1.6%. So for my more I know as a conservative, but less I guess lenient friends out there, we're saying, all right, we're in a recession. However, you have to look at all the data. And so I went back 10 years, thought that was a good number. And I looked at our biggest quarters of GDP growth. 2014, by the way, was our biggest years of GDP growth if we go back 10 years. 5.5%, right? 5.5% GDP growth in Q2 of 14. 5% in Q3 of 2014. Those are big GDP growths. Then we did a 2.3%. So we had negative, the GDP dropped, right? But we didn't have 2 in a row that were negative until right around Q1 of 20, right? So one could argue we had a recession then. And then we pumped a bunch of stimulus into the economy and we had a reversal. We had positive 33%. Q2 of 20 was negative 31%, right? Economy shut down. Then we flipped it and we had a 33.8% growth. So we didn't spend any money in Q2 of 20 because of COVID. And then we flipped it and everyone started spending money again. So you had huge growth, right? Now, growth is just the difference between what happened and what happens next, right? So, if we're going to say that negative GDP growth 2 quarters in a row is a recession, then, what we need to also look at is, well, what are we measuring it against? Because if you look at Q4 of 20, 4.5% growth. Q1 of 21, 6.3% growth. Q2 21, 6.7% growth. Q3 21, 2.3% growth. Q4 21, the end of the year that just happened, almost 7%, 6.9% growth. So we just had this period of time, 5 quarters almost, if you exclude Q3 of 21, where we're at like 5-6% growth, right? Plus we had a 33% growth in Q3 of 20. And so I'm going to give you a perspective to think about, because I don't think most people think of the United States in this way when we think about our government or our country. I just look at the country like a big company, right? I don't know if you've ever done this before, but go type in like United States balance sheet, and you can go look at the balance sheet. Now they hide stuff, they have off balance sheet stuff. Go look at the income statement. It's negative. We run deficits. We print money for the difference. It's been going on for a long time, right? But I just did that once. It was probably like 7 or 8 years ago. I said, "What's our balance sheet?" I mean, I'm a business person. I look at balance sheets and financial statements and income statements all the time. I said, "What's the balance sheet of the United States look like?" And the balance sheet was big. It's a big ass balance sheet. The biggest balance sheet in the world for an individual entity. And so if we start thinking of our country as a company, and we start thinking of GDP growth as top line revenue, like what are we spending on stuff, right? What are we buying with stuff, right? What's the amount of revenue coming in? Now we expense that, right? We're spending money on stuff, or maybe that's top line expenses, right? But let's just use it as gross domestic product. What's we're creating? Let's call that the revenue. I'm going to make that argument for a second. And we just had 4 or 5 quarters in a row, the biggest quarters ever of revenue growth, like in the past 10 years. And if it's in the past 10, I'm going to argue it's in the past 15, because 11, 10, 9, and 8, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, we're not going to be better than 12, right? We're in the middle of the Great Recession then. So we just had literally the best quarters that we've ever had in the last 15 years, followed by a drop. So let's think of this as a company. If a company had its best quarters ever, and then it dropped a little bit, would we say that that company's in trouble? Of course not. We would never make that argument, ever. We'd say, why did it drop? And we go look at that. But you would say, oh, that company's in big trouble right now, man. You'd say, no, they just had their best quarter ever. Q4 of 21 was 6.9%. It's the highest quarter of GDP outside of the reversal from COVID in Q3 of 20, which was, that was just the economy opened back up. So you back that out. This is the biggest quarter of GDP we've had literally in the last 15 years, happened in Q4. Okay. Now we have a lot of people spending. We have a lot of inflation. That's going to drive up GDP because people are spending more money for the same goods. So that is a question I have is, hey, are those GDP numbers reflective of recession, or excuse me, of inflation? But for people to say, oh, we're in a recession, when we're at full employment, when we're coming off the biggest quarters of GDP growth that we've had in the past 15 years, my answer is not yet. Now, we do have, I'm going to look right now. You're going to see a guy that just got his head shaved and his beard trimmed yesterday. I spent $48 for that. And I didn't go to a salon. I went to like a place that's like it's Floyd's 99 barbershop. I used to spend $35 for that. $40 for that, I think, was what I was spending not that long ago. So it's almost a 20% increase for the exact same service as I was getting 3-4 years ago. They just jumped, and I said to her, did you guys just raise your prices? Because it was $19 for my beard trim, right? And that used to be $12 or $14. So we do have real issues in the economy. Don't get me wrong. Inflation is a real problem. And that has not dripped its way through. We have not seen people raise all their wages yet. That's a lagging indicator. So the warning light's on the engine. Don't get me wrong. But are we in a recession yet? And my answer is I don't believe we are. And the reason for it is because if we say that the United States government is a company and they just had their record months of revenue, and now they came down a little bit, which is what we're seeing. We've had negative GDP growth, right? It's shrinking. And this is self-imposed, right? Why? We've just raised interest rates like crazy over the last few months. So, but we're at full employment. We have record high savings in the economy, record high amount of cash in savings accounts. When we have these things, then it's hard to argue that, oh no, we're in this negative period of time economically. So I wanted to give that feedback because I see a lot of pundits out there. There's a lot of guys out there and girls out there that like to talk shit. And and I'm telling you, I believe this is purely political. They want to say that the current administration did this to us, and this is why we shouldn't vote this way. And yeah, I'm not going to say that I don't agree with a lot of the politics and I don't agree with all the policy. I don't think that we should have done QE the way that we did. I don't think we should have been buying mortgage-backed securities the way we did, and I don't think that we should have had the last round of stimulus that we had. And so I do think that a lot of that's led to the issues we're having right now around an overheated inflation numbers. But I also don't believe that we're in a recession yet for the reasons I just said. We just had record high, 6.9%. We've had the highest growth in the past 15 years in end of 20 and all 2021. And we're coming down off those numbers. And I would argue that's a normalization. Yes, we are slowing down the economy, but it's coming off its highs. So if I'm going 200 miles an hour and I drop, by the way, if you drop 25% from 200 miles an hour, if I drop my speed 25%, negative speed growth of negative 25%, I'm still going 150 miles an hour, right? So this is a really good analogy. Economy is going 200 miles an hour. I pump the brake a little bit. I'm down to 150, and people are like, "Oh my God, look how slow he's going." I'm not going slow. I'm just not going 200 miles an hour anymore. I'm going 150. Hell, I could drop at 50 and go to 100. I'm still going fast. So we have to always look at the numbers as to what they really represent. Negative GDP growth off record highs does not mean you're in a recession. It means you're slowing down off record highs. Now, if you had a normalized economy where it was steady growth, 2-3%, quarter in, quarter out, and you dropped 2 quarters in a row, I would agree that you're probably in a recession. That's not what just happened. So take it for what it's worth. You're entitled to your opinion. I'd love to hear if you have feedback from me, but that's the way I see it, is when I'm coming off my highs, if I drop a little bit, doesn't mean I'm in a recession. By the way, I see this all the time when they talk about the mortgage world and the housing market. Oh, mortgage applications are down, 20% year over year, origination down 50% year over year. Yeah, asshole. You forgot to also mention that during COVID, the numbers doubled. Same exact thing as we're talking about here at GDP. Numbers doubled, right? Houses, the number of houses bought up 20%. Now it's down 20%. Yeah, down 20% off of a 20% increase. So if you average the numbers together, it's like you're kind of at zero growth, which means that's flat. So you got to look at all the numbers, and I encourage people to be inquisitive and don't just believe what you see the headlines. It's a bunch of fucking clickbait that people like to throw out there. A lot of it's politically leaning, and I'm a moderate, like I said, so I'm in the middle of the road. I'm like, hey, show me the data. And when I look at the data, I'm like, hey, we just had 6.9% GDP growth in Q4, and yeah, we had negative GDP growth off that, but we had 5 quarters in a row record GDP in the past, the highest GDP we've had in the last 15 years. So does that mean we're in a recession? I don't believe so. Anyway, love sharing my thoughts with you. Thank you for listening to the show. If you like what you heard, click the share button, click the like button, give us a review. The more reviews we get, obviously promotes the show. But anyway, appreciate you very much. Talk to you soon. Peace out. I love you.
You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, Print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers, and after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.
She's my lover.